Hello? Hello? Oh, okay, mic sounds pretty good. Hello? Oh, okay, mic sounds pretty good. That's pretty good. The latency isn't that bad. I've set it to low latency, and you should be able to watch the live stream at 1440p 60. Hopefully it can even support that. Hopefully Starlink can support that sort of speed. That you let me know if it's like laggy or anything. Hello, Corpse. Hello, Parkway. Richard. Hey, Kurt. Keel. Oneki. What's up? How you guys doing? This is a spontaneous stream. I just thought, you know, usually on Sundays, everyone's kind of laid back. Or at least at home. So I decided, why not just stream? So Chillbird. 4068 gigabytes or 4060 Ti 16. I would, I don't know. It's, I mean, 16 gigabytes is always better. But the question is, do you intend on upgrading within the next 4 to 5 years? If you do, then you may not need the 16 gigabyte variant. And by the time you upgrade, that 16 gigabyte variant will not have the same value, or you won't get the same or much more money for it in the used market versus the 8 gigabyte one. If you do intend to upgrade in like 4 to 5 years, if you want to keep it for 5 years, then I would recommend the 16 gigabyte one. Hello, Tovin. Oh, for Blender, it depends. Blender doesn't need that much compared to games. It depends, right? Because you want to optimize your scenes. But yeah, generally speaking, if you know how to decently optimize in Blender, you won't need nearly the amount of gigabytes of VRAM. And if you do end up using a lot of VRAM, you can use the SSD for that as well. Like it'll use some of the SSD for that, and it's fine. In games, obviously, it's somewhat different, but yeah, you will be fine in Blender. You won't need more than 16 gigs, even unless you plan to render in cycles. And then I can imagine you would actually want probably 16 gigabytes of VRAM, because cycles uses quite a lot of VRAM. Hello, Notrox. Hello, Stormy. Hard time motivating myself. Just do what's fun to you primarily. Don't try to force yourself to do stuff that you don't enjoy doing, because you want, or at least my brain works in the way that I get really into stuff and want to get better at things that I really like doing, versus stuff that I feel like is the means to get there. I will usually, like, my brain sort of just shuts off. So if there's certain things that you just don't like doing, maybe find a workaround around them, or just find a way to like make you like them, if that makes sense. Your brain has to be actively interested in those things for you to really like be motivated to do them as well. Gravity release when? This year. Definitely this year. Hopefully within the next few months. I was wanting to do one more remix before, like, I wanted to do a couple more things before starting the self-releases this year. And yeah, I just started. So obviously it doesn't mean that it's going to be in December 2025, but I want to plan this out a bit before I start doing self-releases, just so I have a bit more eyes on it. Are you going to be releasing more tutorial content on the Patreon this year? Been really digging the videos. I've upgraded my sound design from watching your free streams on YouTube and Patreon. Thanks. Yes. After I hit sample pack volume 36, I plan to then instead focus on a sort of how-to series, a mini-series that I can have multiple videos on the Patreon. They're going to be like 1 to 2 minutes max, or longer or shorter depending. And there's just sort of supposed to be like a time capsule recipe, sort of sound design recipes, right? So you can get back to them and understand how a certain type of sound works. I've been wanting to do something like that, and then I can cover all kinds of topics, but have them sort of be concise and quick and easy. You can always come back to them instead of having to watch a long stream. So that's something I wanted to plan on doing this year. In terms of signature sound, just keep making stuff that you like. Just keep leaning into that direction and experiment in the ways that you want to experiment. And I think just over time it'll come. It'll just naturally develop that way. But with that being said, let me figure out a way to have this stream setting correctly, so I can see all the comments and all. Let me go to... Also, is the stream fine? Is there no lags or anything like that? Hopefully not. But let me check if I can have the chat open as well. Or if I have to log in for it. Do I really have to? Ich? Okay. But yeah, let me see. Hello, Nair. Awesome. Will you do more videos on Plugdata? For example, how to create a basic compressor? Basic to understand Plugdata's functions. Yes. I mean, at some point, yeah. Once I figured out a way to translate the whole system easily to people so they can make their own things, for sure. And live stream, yeah. Yeah, there are many tutorials on it, and as well, if there are not many tutorials on Plugdata, you can always look them up on Pure Data because it's based on that. So it's and also you can ask ChatGPT. Generally speaking, it knows quite a lot about it. Pretty cool. Let me move this screen over here and let me move over to stream. Let's see if this runs fine. Hello, Melofi. Also, let me check real quick. Go to stats. Pretty good. Go to docs, YouTube Live Control Panel. One second, I'll log into my stupid account. Excellent. Move this here, and then I have everything that I need. Will there be a lot of collaboration and plugins this year? Yes, both of them, absolutely. So it'll be the the mini series of videos, the Plugdata patches, and lots of music. That's the goal this year. How do you download Plugdata correctly? I can't get it to work in FL Studio. Okay, so in that case, I can quickly go over that because that's what this live stream isn't that long. It's only going to be like 1 to 2 hours. Also, let me quickly check something. Saying current bitrate is lower than the recommended bitrate. Yes, but I can't stream at a 13500. Can't stream on that bitrate. Sorry, YouTube. Yeah, I know it's a suggestion. All right. So what I wanted this stream to be about is, as you can see. Also, is the compression fine on YouTube? Is it like doable? Is it okay? Is it fine? Is everything kind of updating correctly, or is everything? Because like if the compression is low enough, everything will kind of look very smeared. Like you have FSR or DLSS running on the stream. Sorry, that was a little jab at upscalers. Is there VIP for Insidious? No, there is not. And I probably don't even have the original project file anymore. Prism reminds me of Retune. Yes. And that's good because Retune has a really good user interface. Good, it's good. Looks okay, perfect. Okay, yeah, so this video is about, or this live stream is about Prism. I wanted to talk about, well, N-Prysm. I wanted to kind of just explore what you can do with it because I haven't really done any videos on it. I did obviously one YouTube video on it, but I haven't quite explained the magnitude of things that you can do with it. And I also want to explain how it works and why it's really cool and why it's sort of it hasn't really been done before in the same sense. And I'll also show you some cool things you can do with vocoders and morphing plugins like spectral morph and all that. There's some really cool things that we can explore. Also, let me check one more thing. It's not giving enough video. Is the stream fine? Because YouTube is like complaining. Is it buffering or anything like that? Or are we good? I'm just making sure, right? Hello, Bestie. Or Bastie. Stream good. Awesome. Great. But yeah, so oh, and other news as well. I wanted to quickly mention, and I'll have to open this up on the browser, because I have a cool new post somewhere over here. Yes, right here. So I'll show you this. Just for all the people who are interested in trying out Plugdata, I've made this post on the Patreon that now has all of the patches in one zip file. So you can download it right here, this one Plugdata bundle zip file. And so it has all the current Plugdata patches that I've made, including the free ones as well, which is phase shift and slow-mo. And over here is where you have a download link. And this was about someone asked about how to actually use these things. All you do is you type in Plugdata, and then you go to plugdata.org. You go to download, and then you download it for your respective, OS. So in this case, I'm using Windows, which might change in the future if SteamOS comes out. Windows x64. You hit download, install the VST free in this case, and then you'll have two Plugdata. One is Plugdata as an instrument, And then you have one which is Plugdata effects as an effect plugin. And that's the one where you want to just hit open patch in it, find the folder, the extracted folder, and then open the project, the patch file inside. Is Plugdata like a program you can make your own plugins? Basically, yes. It sort of is like that. Similar to how Max for Live kind of lets you make plugins. It's quite similar. Let me see, is YouTube complaining again? We've already had that. Sorry. Yeah, it's basically, well, it wasn't really designed to be like a full-on, like a plugin sort of host sort of style thing, but Pure Data in general and Plugdata and Max for Live, even like Max has this thing called RMBO, which lets you export Max patches as VST. So all these sort of visual coding environments, they do tend to want to lean into that direction. And I think as well, you guys may know of this thing called Reactor by Native Instruments. And obviously Bitwig's Grid as well. Reactor 6, yeah. So this is, I think this also lets you build your own, sort of, almost your own plugins as well. If you look at the nodes-based system here, you can build your own stuff here as well. So it's quite similar. All of these different programs kind of do similar things. What I really like about Plugdata is just the development behind it, the dev behind it. He's super focused on having things run great and having things performant and looking good and having it nice to use and be available on all platforms. It's awesome, and there's been so many crazy quality of life improvements as well. The next update is going to be kind of crazy, where you're going to have a proper library and all, instead of just, you know, having like these patches and your you can like patches, which is great, but currently it'll feel more like something similar to Contact, where you'll have, you know, like libraries, like your plugins will feel like a library of sorts. So you have, and you'll be able to download them from Plugdata servers, I think, as well. You can update them right from Plugdata itself. So that's all going to be super, super exciting. But that doesn't really change anything about the current state, which is it just functioning well, and you already being able to make whatever you want to make. And that's why I wanted to do a live stream on Prism, primarily because I feel like people underestimate or maybe don't know what this thing is capable of, because they may not understand what this thing is doing. It's not really similar to Chroma. It's also not similar to Retune or PitchMap or other sort of chromatic resynthesizers. It's doing this all in real time, and it's doing some really cool tricks to get it all working. So I wanted to kind of break down how it works and then show you some really cool sort of sound design tricks that you can use, because it's really freeing and it's also low latency. This thing uses only 5.6 milliseconds of latency, and Plugdata effects in general only has like, I think has a base latency of like 1 millisecond. So it's yeah, it's really solid. Hello, Oro. Hope you're doing well. Hugo said, hey, nice guy, miss you, man. This is amazing. You explain music production. Thank you. I appreciate that. I will at some point definitely make a tutorial, because I feel like a lot of people are interested in sort of creating their own ideas. But yeah, so that being said, I do finally have one big bundle. It's also obviously available under the Elite tier, so you can just, grab the Elite tier subscription for a month, for example, download this and just kind of be done with it. But the idea behind this is also that all of the featured plugins, or patches in this case, because they're not plugins, but they're not binary files. They're essentially just presets, like complex presets. They're all the latest versions. So if I update, say, SpecComp, which I actually did today, because I had to fix something in SpecComp and SpecClip, if I have a fix or an update for one of these patches, then you will know via email, and it'll say last updated, that the whole patch and the whole bundle has been updated to have the latest versions of everything. So you can sort of see this as a hub So I think that will actually change when the next Plugdata version comes out. Then you can just update it from within Plugdata, which is awesome. Yeah, so as you can see, I've been kind of cooking, you could say. We have 2 free plugins, 3 patches, which is Phase Shift, which is a freeform spectral delay, and I actually plan on making another one that is real time. So that's just using bandpass filters to split the signal into a bunch of like a filter bank, and you delay things that way. So it's essentially 0 latency. Then slow-mo, which is a half-time effect with a parallel bandpass and smoothing. Then you have spectral mask, which I just recently updated to be like way more efficient. I think it only uses like 2 to 3% CPU usage now, which is a spectral masker. So that is sort of like a spectral gate, but it's meant to use the sidechain input so you can clean up effects. Then you have spec clip, which is an ultra transparent spectral clipper. Super transparent in terms of like you can make things super loud because it's keeping, like you can keep certain frequencies from clipping above a certain threshold. So you don't get that intermodulation distortion that you would usually get with regular clippers. Spec gate, which is a flexible spectral gate. You can switch between tonal and noise really quickly, and it'll have basically the perfect opposite. So you could essentially create a phase inverted version or phase cancelling version very, very easily. NSUB, which was one of the hardest ones to make, which is a fully blown 8 partial oscillator, sub-oscillator with effects with that is primarily based on audio. So you just have it as an effect on anything, and then you can just have a separate sub. And you can also drive it with MIDI. This one was such a pain to make. Hello, Affinity. And beautiful tempo. Then we have obviously SpecComp and SpecComp Lite, and actually now as well, SpecComp Lite is a bit more efficient now than SpecComp because I was able to do a bunch of CPU optimizations recently. So SpecComp Lite is super efficient. I actually plan on making a SpecComp Mini, which is going to be free, that has just a standard amount of smoothing and a base curve that you can tilt. And then you have a time parameter and amount of parameter that just controls everything. So have it be super simplistic, and hopefully I can maybe even shave off some CPU, but it's unlikely. But then most importantly, which is the most recent one, which is Prism, N-Prysm, and that is the real-time chromatic resynthesizer. And that one is one of the, technically one of the patches that I've worked on the longest in terms of DSP, because I had to sort of invent it to some degree. I had to kind of think outside the box when it came to how to do this stuff all in real time, and I'll talk about sort of one of the initial ideas I had. Hello, Doggo. But with that being said, N-Prysm, there will be an update for it soon as well. I'll add MIDI support, which once again won't be as complex as the Matrix. There's one bug with the upper slider here. If you duplicate the patch, and it'll remember it, but when you want to move it again on the duplicated patch, once you click the right one, it'll reset to some original position. Though it'll remember, so if you don't touch it, it'll be fine, but that's a bug. And then also, I wanted to add muting for the bands, for the band limiting, so you can mute the outside bands. And then for the people who love to do microtonal stuff, I wanted to add a fine tune, so you can fine tune all the filters and all the oscillators, because people all want that. So that'll be another thing. But yeah, hello, Wasted. I'm doing well. How about you? But yeah, I wanted to talk about Prism, how it works, and some interesting tidbits, because there's some really, really cool things you can do with vocoders that I think a lot of people don't know. So let's talk about how I came up with the idea for Prism and what it does. So what Prism does is, think of it like a vocoder. So you have a vocoder with a bunch of bands, and then these bands are spaced out in equal temperament distances. So one band will equal one specific note plus minus 50 cents, right? And there'll be some minor overlap because, otherwise you'd have to have some insane filter slopes. And then what you do is you split it up into these bands. And then what you say, for example, let's have that one right there. You guys can hear this, right? So we have like one right here. So we have a bunch of, bands. And then what you say as well, okay, so if you have a band, right, let's say we have a strong EQ like this, we can actually just visualize it here. We just have, say we just lock in this one, which is then a perfect chromatic node. And I think we'll have to turn on the band here as well. You can see there's some leaking happening on this one, so we may have to duplicate it. There we go. So you can see this note right here, if we load up a Pro Q. In this case, it's actually a perfect B3, but let's move up to a different note here. This one. What is this? A G sharp 4. If I move it around, you can probably see. There we go. That's super loud, I'm sorry. But you can see, for example, this isolated note right here is a G4 minus 23, right? So if we do, and this isn't doing, equal temperament band passes. If we were to do it, we could actually do it with Pro Q. If we were to do a band pass right here, and we say, we grab an A sharp 4, and let's do a higher slope just to visualize. We can see, for example, right here, it's isolating this note, at least this note right here is the loudest. And Pro Q, can you stop? You can see that note, in this case, is once again a perfect note. But let's see if we get one. Right here, for example, we have an A4 plus 32, right? Is this too loud or is it fine? It's actually too quiet right now. So what you could do is, try to figure out how to auto-tune all the individual frequencies and kind of do that. And what Chroma does is it isolates in a similar fashion. It takes a bunch of semitone offset frequency bands and, it does it with peak filters, but isolates all the ones that would be in key and keeps them, and all the ones that are off key, it'll isolate them and then shift them up or down by one semitone. Problem there is, of course, is that if we have an isolated frequency, that frequency doesn't necessarily equal, a perfect note, right? So you can see the C5 right here is at minus 13. So how do we move that C5 minus 13, right? You could try it with frequency shifting, but then you have to have some kind of algorithm that knows what note that particular frequency is at. And then that all gets very, very complicated, and you start getting like a polyphonic autotune, and it all gets kind of crazy. And then you kind of move to FFT anyways, because FFT is, generally speaking, more efficient for this kind of stuff. And that's how you get things like retune, right? With retune, it does all the hard work of splitting into, let's do D minor, for example. That sounds so weird. There we go. Do I have anything on the master? I don't. So you can see how, like, retune, for example, it's taking some of the partials here and then it's moving them to correct them for, whatever notes you're supposed to be hitting. The problem with retune, at least, is that because it's using such a high FFT size, the actual pitch correction isn't perfect. It wobbles a little bit, so that can cause some problems. But that's besides the point. What I'm trying to say is that doing a real-time effect that figures out how to correct frequencies is really difficult, right? That's what I'm trying to say. It's really difficult. So how did I do it with Prism? If I load up Prism, and I do, let's turn this to 100%. Right now it's on chromatic, so if I move this skin, you can see it's all chromatic, similar to retune. So we want to have something like minor, and then we'll put it to D as the root note. And suddenly, get a very nice sounding harmonic rich sort of result. And all of that is happening at 5.6 milliseconds. Oh, you really don't have to hold the note when you speak. Sorry. Yeah. I kind of keep forgetting that. That's probably because it's pretty loud, right? Yeah. Still very loud. I may actually want to turn up my own volume here. Okay. So with that being said, you can tell that Prism is somehow able to do all of this in real time. Here's retune. You can hear retune sounds a bit different, a bit cleaner in this case because it's linear phase, so you don't get any phase dispersion while you do with... you get a little bit of phase dispersion with Prism. But how does it do it in real time with real-time filters? So the way I'm doing it with Prism, and this was the interesting idea, is that we take, for example, our C5 band, and instead of trying to move whatever content is in here, what we say is, well, this band has a certain volume, right? And so if this band has a certain volume, that means that whatever's in here should probably keep the same volume, but be moved to that perfect note. So we should get a perfect C5 note, right? That's the goal, is to get a perfect C5 note. Whatever's in here should be a C5. So what we can say is, okay, well, then let's just replace whatever's in here with a perfect oscillator. So what that means is that we're just using the volume of this bandpass, the resulting volume. Sorry, I think I'm holding the note again. We're just using the resulting volume of that, similar to like a vocoder, and we're just driving a sine oscillator that is a perfect C5 note. And I can kind of demonstrate a somewhat similar effect that doesn't quite work the same way, but I'll show you. And this is a really cool thing you can do right now in Ableton with Vocoder, for example. What we'll do, and this is pretty fun, and this you can try this with like morphing plugins and everything. And I was even planning on potentially doing a free version of this with an FFT algorithm, but it doesn't always work because it's a bit different. What I find so amazing about Prism is that it's so much cleaner than Retune or Pitchman, and it does it in real time. And with low CPU, it's probably the perfect Retune plugin for color base. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yes, the only thing that I wish it had was linear phase with low latency, but that's just not possible, unfortunately. But what I wanted to show you is a little hack. So you know how usually people, like, they will have, a vocoder, they'll do external, right? And then we'll grab, I don't know, like let's do a phase plant here. And we'll do unison and then detune. And then they'll put in a chord, right? Like a E minor. Have a long note here. They'll do like that, right? We'll have that chord there. Let's also make it stereo because it's currently mono. And then they'll grab a serum and then they'll say, oh, I'll have my audio from phase plant, right? And then I'm still not sure. I have to probably go to prefix. Nope. Oh, yeah, we have to play it. Yeah, that's why. Boom. And then, sorry, that was very loud. We'll turn down the release here, turn on the level. Why is it not? Oh, yeah, sorry. And then we always get the same thing. And then depending on what we have in here, right, we could be using some kind of bass, maybe like a chugger. Let's have the bands up. So that works. And what I would personally do as well, and I'm just going to do this because the Prism does the same thing, is we're going to have a multiband here, and we're going to map the high and the low band here. I'm going to duplicate this 3 times. And then this is going to be the low, and then this is going to be the high. And then I guess this doesn't have any sub. I thought it would have some sub. I think I'm like way higher. I'm not high passing this. Where's the sub? Huh? Oh, there we go. I was way too high. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. There we go. So this is the mid band, so I'll move it to the mid. This is the low band, actually, so this goes high. There we go. There we go. So the thing is, I can say, 4,000 here, and let's do 200 here. And then I can set the vocoder in here to be a range of 200, and then the upper range is 4,000. So we're actually using all the bands. So that sort of works, and people usually do that, and they use, like chords, and then they start changing the chord around, and maybe change it to, let's keep it in, put a scale on this, in minor. So if I move this up, sample to, sounds pretty bad right now because I think. I mean, yeah, obviously this is playing a different chord, so that makes sense. But yeah, we'll keep it there. What we can actually do, probably to make this way simpler, is I'm just going to take this effect and I'm just going to use a drop loop because I don't want to be sound designing right now. At least not right now, because we'll do that in a bit. I'll grab a bass loop. Bass panel, like this one, and mute this. Prism has to be the thing I've been looking for the last few months. It's amazing. Thank you so much. So what I'm trying to say is this is usually how people do it, right? They use a vocoder, then they use a bunch of supersaws, send them in, and then they get some kind of like colorization. Now, what if I told you that there's a better way to do this? Right now, we're using supersaws, and this is good because it gives us a bunch of upper harmonic, partials and all, fill up the spectrum, but there's a much better way to do this. And that's how I actually got into the idea with Prism. So what we do instead, and this is really, really cool, is let's go back to this faceplant patch. We're going to exchange this analog for just a sine wave. And we're going to go inside. And we're going to create our scale that we want to use across the whole spectrum. So we're going to have a D, we're going to have an E and F, a G, A, and then a C. We're going to leave out the B or the A sharp. We're going to leave that out. So that's going to be our entire spectrum, or our scale in that sense. So if you take a look at, say, Pro Q, you can see that's our scale. That's clipping, which I really don't want it to. And we may want to turn, oh, it's okay. There we go, right? So now what we can do is we can move this down to D0, or a little bit up, because we want to kind of start around the 200 Hertz region, which is like around here. So we really don't care even about this octave. So we move it up one more. There we go. And then what we want to do is we want to duplicate this octave across the rest of the spectrum. The way we do this is at least in FacePlant, it's pretty easy to do. You could do this either in MIDI, but I find it just to be easier with the unison mode. All you do is you go to the unison mode here and you switch this to pitch stacking. You turn on the detune, and then you can see by this over here. I'll make this the mini version. You can see what we can do now. Oh, we have to probably remove. Yeah, we have more notes in here. These have to go. There we go. If I change the amount of unison, this is our original octave. If I start moving this up, you can see how we're duplicating. How we're duplicating that octave across, the whole spectrum. And what that does is it gives us a bunch of really, really clean sine waves to go with. So now if we go back to our vocoder and just use this as the input, I can, for example, load up a different bass pattern. They're all in D. You can hear how we're now replacing all of those. We're driving a bunch of chromatically correct or scale correct sine waves. So the one way is using the depth here. You can turn this down and you can see we're still getting some sort of amplitude modulation. But what you could do as well is you could turn up the gate here. What becomes really fun is when you now, for example, throw in a shifter right before vocoder and you start shifting this around. You can also do you can see you can get a bunch of really, really cool results. And this also works for morphing plugins. So if I replace this vocoder with, for example, like a Melda M-Morph, which is right here. This is actually quite complex if you go into the edit section. But once again, if you don't know how FFT and all that works, this is all kind of confusing, right? I'm going to reset all of these parameters so they don't do anything. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the sidechain input be, and I'm going to disable the shifter, have that be phase plant. So the same, just pure sine waves. Then I'm going to swap the A and B, and I'm going to turn this down. I'm going to reduce the release, compression, and all. I'm going to have the buffer size at that, but turn up the resolution a little bit. You can tell it gets quite a bit louder. So what we can do here is we can turn down the gain of the beat. Turn on release and attack. And you can hear how we're getting a somewhat similar result. It sounds a bit more like pitch map, yeah, because once again, the cool thing with this is that the idea is that we are only, we're driving, right? We're envelope shaping using either vocoder or FFT, but we're only driving perfectly in tune sine waves. So what we want to do here, though, if you want to use morph, is you want to turn up the gate right here, this is important, the gate for A. You can turn up some of the release here. You can also turn up the gate on here. And then you can start, once again, experimenting with something like shifting before it. And what's really cool about this process is you can actually use lower buffer sizes and it'll still sound pretty good. Like 1024 here, for example. You can also try someone like 4096. Now, the big problem with this technique is that if we go back to something lower, and we have a specific note being hit by any sound, it can happen that that is between, or that is not really driving anything. So let me show you. I'm pretty sure I have one here. I think this one. I think even the vocoder will show it. What's one of these? Found the one. What was it? Let's grab one of the laser ones. So, for example, in here, if I start moving the bass or the pitch around for the space, you will notice that at some point the note will disappear. Like right here, for example, what's happening is that that note specifically is, and I can kind of show you if I load up a Pro Q3, is we have this note right here. I think it's this one somewhere around here. I think it's this F sharp note. So that is F sharp note is not part of our scale, right? And because it's not part of our scale, it actually just gets discarded. It doesn't, nothing happens to it. It just gets discarded. So if I, for example, if I disable it, you can even like use a, whoops. Let's use a bandpass for this so you can really hear it. And I would like some controls. Thank you. Oh my God, please. Small. So that's the note. That kind of just disappears. So for example, if I disable, let's move this away. If I disable the vocoder one and use the morph one, you would think that one would catch it. Nope. Even if you turn up the resolution, it doesn't. And the reason why that happens is because this particular note that's being hit is not part of the scale. So because of that, there's nothing to drive, right? There's no, because this signal that we're sending out is just a static, you know, set of sine waves, a static set of frequencies, as you can see right here. That particular note that we have here, I think we could probably even do a sidechain. I think that would be pretty cool if that would work. We can probably enable the sidechain from here. Wait. Sidechain. There we go. There it is. Okay, perfect. I'm gonna make this big so you can really see it. So you can see how that particular frequency right there, this is so cool that I can visualize this, is not hitting. It's right in between, right? It's like, it's right here. If I move it down, watch this. If I move it down, we are now hitting the note. Oh, I can't still hear it. I think it's, it's because we're, EQing it. There we can hear it. And then it's sort of disappearing again. There we go. So you can kind of see it if I show it here. That's now hitting F, or close to F. And because this is hitting F sharp 5, it's getting discarded. So this technique doesn't really work as a sort of retuner in a sense. And that's the problem. So with Prism, that doesn't happen. Watch this. If I use, once again, if I use this technique, so use the vocoder, for example, the note sort of disappears, right? Let's use the regular depth here. So no gate and then just depth. So here you can clearly hear it. And then it sort of just disappears behind a chord. So what we can do is if we load up Prism, I want to show you the results. Right? So if I go with the D and then minor, in here, this is actually retuning. Even if I move around the pitch now, it's always there. It doesn't actually discard those frequencies. If I go ahead and enable the vocoder method again, and I start, pitching it up and down, there, you can hear it's kind of hollow. Nothing's happening. There, you can kind of hear it being dissonant again. So what's happening is that the way Prism works is it's essentially a filter bank like vocoder. I think it's up to 72 filter banks. And what it's doing is it's taking, a filter bank here, for example. Let's say this is, like F sharp in this case, right? The one that is problematic. And it's telling the F sharp note, hey, we're going to move you so that F sharp note would be right here. Enable this. The F sharp note would be right here. So if I disable this, move it to F sharp, so you can actually hear what's happening. We have that F sharp note, and we can then, because we're actually also computing that particular band, we can move it around. I think it might actually be, it's actually this one. Wait, it's this one. There we go. You can hear it. If I move this around, the matrix, so I can move around that frequency instead of discarding it with a static filter bank, if that makes sense. Because filter banks are just, in terms of the vocoder, it's just, it's taking the bass sound and it's splitting it into a bunch of bandpass filters. And then it's taking the sine waves here from our phase plant and splitting that into a bunch of bandpass filters. And then it's modulating one with the other. It's sort of very brute force, very simplistic. Prism, what it does, it actually converts. So it splits the incoming signal into bands. And then instead of taking any other signal, it just has a bunch of sine oscillators per band. So per bandpass filter. This, say, for example, this is a C note right here, right? This is a C note. It then has a dedicated oscillator, sine oscillator for that C note. And then you can pitch it whatever way you want. That's what Prism does. And it's real time. So if I go back to minor, I can just change this around. I can even change the pitch here. and it's all clean. And what's really cool about Prism too is, and one of the reasons why I might be using a bit of CPU, is because it's using something called a Hilbert filter, or it's doing magnitude extraction, which is essentially just a higher quality envelope that you can get from a bandpass. Versus what usually most filter banks do, which is like most vocoders do, which is just extracting the regular envelope and then kind of smoothing it out and all. More FFT, more resolution, more quality. Yes and no. The quality, it depends on what the use case is. For example, with spec comp is only, I think, 1024 FFT, 1024 samples, or 512 bands, because the lower the FFT size, the more accurate the time information is. Versus if you have a higher FFT size, then everything becomes smeary, and you get that sort of that blending effect, right? That diffusion effect, that smearing effect. So it's a two-sided sword. With Prism, obviously, what's cool is that besides the added ringing or the resonance from the filters, everything is real time. So there's no, like, the magnitude extraction from the bandpass filters is as accurate as it gets, really. So what does this do for us, right? Like, why does this matter? Well, it matters because it means fundamentally that Prism works differently than Chroma, for example. We have, let's put in a pattern in D again, like this one. Sounds pretty cool, right? Without it. Let's throw in a multi-pass filter. Or actually, what I like doing is I like grabbing elastic pitch, which is still hands down the best pitch shifter ever. Let's disable the link here so this can stay in the middle. Just super fun to do. Anyways, so actually I can probably demonstrate this with elastic pitch quite well as well. So what happens, right? So if we load up Chroma, for example, Chroma is similar to the vocoder method that I showed you, somewhat static. So if we use a D minor scale, let's use the high quality mode. The way Chroma works is it's changing the off-key frequencies as regions, and then it's pitch shifting them up or down by one semitone. So it doesn't actually know any of the sort of microtonal information. If anything is like off by a few cents. So what that does is, if we, for example, use a multipass and we use a frequency shifter just on the mids and the high frequencies, and we start changing this around, you can kind of hear how it's like somewhat still in key, but you can definitely tell that things are a bit detuned and all over the place, right? It's probably better demonstrated on like a melody loop, for example. So if I have one somewhere. I think we have a melody loop here. Just a regular one, please. Melody loop, here we go. Like this one. So Chroma will work perfectly fine if you just use it like this. Right? Works perfectly fine. That's because it's working with an already sort of tonal signal, like a chromatic signal. As soon as we start introducing atonality, which is just, for example, frequency shifting, so having it linearly pitch shift up and down, we get a bit of a mess, right? And this is probably something you've experienced. And if you turn up the color, you can sort of combat it a little bit, but obviously then we trade that with resonance. And it's just exciting what is close to like in key frequencies. This does not happen with Prism. So if I move Prism after frequency shifting, let me move the frequency shift around here. Let's start turning up the frequency shifter. Turn this down a bit. Prism about it. It's still in key. Let's pitch shift it down. Let's mix it in. Let's try frequency, ring modulator. You know, that one sounds kind of weird to begin with. Let's add maybe some delay. Let's compare that to Chroma again. This doesn't quite get there, right? It just doesn't quite get there compared to Prism. But the delay here is completely off because it's not BPM synced. I think this is at like 140. So if we play it here, that's what we're actually getting. This is what we're actually getting from the frequency shifter, which sounds pretty cool, but it's not in key. If we try Chroma, it can kind of do it, but you can still tell it's quite, off key. And then with Prism, so once again, Retune can actually do something somewhat similar. If we load up Retune here, for example, and we set it up to use the same scaling, so we do chromatic to minor and a D, and we'll move these down right here. And then we'll turn up the pitch correction, turn up the sensitivity, turn down the smoothing. It'll sound like this. But I'm not sure if you can hear this. And I think the best way to demonstrate, I'll show you in a second why, funnily enough, Prism actually sounds somewhat better than retune in a lot of cases. It's because retune suffers from like some weird, how do you say it? It's the pitch shifting. Wait, I don't need to be recording. The pitch, the pitch shifting correction that it does, or the pitch correction that it does, is jittery. It jitters. Well, so that means that you can actually get frequencies that aren't 100%, you know, like tonal, because it's trying to do this through an auto-tune process. Prism just replaces frequency information with equal temperament one. So what that means is, for example, we could change. You could use you can even use an LFO here. And it doesn't struggle with it. And region still sounds somewhat fine in here, right? But compare, once again, this is using 170 milliseconds of latency versus 5. So what sort of implications does this have? And this is what the live stream is for, is I wanted to just show you what this thing can do, right? So obviously you heard it on bass loops. Disable this one. Let's go back to here. So one more thing that Prism has, or two more things that it has that are quite useful, is obviously the frequency bands here. So you can go up to, I think, like 8K. Yeah, up to 8K. So you can see the note right here that you can access up to C9 and then down to C2. So that spans 7 octaves, I believe, or 6 octaves. So if you go lower with the band, then you get a bit more resonance, because the lower frequency filters are, you know, they have more ringing. You can hear that as well. But if you're working with like synths and all, sometimes it's good to even have the high frequency content there be resynthesized. But more importantly, you get pitch and isolate. And what isolate does is it has essentially a gate for all of the filter banks, or for the whole filter bank. So if you turn this up, starting to gate out the frequency. So if we do this full band here, this is super useful to remove tails, right? Because sometimes if you have a very full sound, I think we can probably load up another one that is pretty full, like this one, for example. You can hear quite a bit of tails. So if I turn up the isolate, we can really remove a lot of the sort of ringing that and a lot of the sort of noise floor that Prism sort of adds because of the real-time filters. And if you set that correctly with the with a nice band limit, can sound really nice. Another one. Let's load up another one. So that's what isolate does. Now, pitch is pretty cool. So what pitch does is if you turn it up and down, you essentially get an internal pitch shifter that changes the offset of the filter bank. What that essentially does is it pitches the incoming signal up or down. It sounds really cool because you get scale-aware pitch shifting. So, for example, so if I go with a different example, one that has a strong fundamental. So I'll have another one. You can also use this on background effects, for example. You can use this on, I think I had some nice, once again, some nice melody loops somewhere. Where are they? Somewhere here. Here we go. Come on. So, for example, what you could do is you could just, retune it first. Oh, we still have multipass on this, by the way. Wow, I didn't even notice. So, for example, even if I pick up a D minor, which is the scale that we're currently using, if we use a melody loop that is in D minor, use this one, and I loop this particular section, I can then add a pitched up version of this that is still in key. So now I can mix this in. I can have both. Listen to that. I need to remove the elastic pitch and multipass and the retune because they introduce latency. And then we can combine that with frequency shifting on top of all of this. There, you have to turn up the mix for that. So you could have two prisms, right? One after another. And then one would do the whole thing. yes, if you, I mean, NMLC uses latency to delay things forward in time, similar to like the new Snapback plugin by Cable Guys. So it's, at the end of the day, it's adding even more latency. So I wouldn't recommend it unless you have a plugin that introduces latency but doesn't compensate it, if that makes sense. Let's do some like crazy random sample and hold. Let's make it rhythmic. I think this is 150, so let's turn this up. Maybe let's have a specific rhythm. So I'll do, I think that we can do this probably in Snap Heap. Way easier to do it in here. And then maybe also let's have a band pass. Let's have a delay in that. Let's have a transgate. I might have a limiter on the master here just in case. So this is where I'm starting to get into the whole anything is possible sort of thing with Prism. I'm going to take out what Prism does. And we can try use retune on this to see if we can salvage it with retune. So we'll put it to D minor, pitch correct it all the way and see if it works. Let's make it more staccato. That's retune. That's Prism. I'm gonna add a little bit of isolate here. Hello, Xana. Sounds like the musical. Wait, oh, this is still playing. Sorry. Sounds like the musical dandelion the guy was using to make sort of colorful sounds by blowing it. Oh yeah. So you can hear that with retune, yes, we're getting some sort of correction, but you can also hear how it's really smearing it. Like, there's no really, like, we have a clear ADSR, right? And it's sort of being smeared all around. And this is usually the problem with FFT, is that it's adding a lot of, and this is usually actually because of the linear phase nature, is it's adding a lot of pre-ringing. You don't get that with Prism. The only thing you're getting with Prism, though, is obviously some dispersion. And because the lower frequency filters, they resonate more. Generally speaking, lower frequency filters will resonate more. They'll have longer tails. And that can, a lot of times, not sound that good. In this case, since we're cutting, it's fine. But you can hear like those lower ones here. The resonant sort of decay that you get is pretty long. And if you exclude them, you can see, you can kind of hear like it sounds kind of better if it's just not affected. Generally speaking, the range that is really important, or that is sort of feasible for these kinds of effects, is in the 200 to 4000 hertz region. Anything lower than that or higher will, generally speaking, not really sound the way you want it to. And that's generally speaking because of the ways filters are designed or the ways FFT is designed. In terms of FFT, actually, lower frequency content is handled better, but that's at the cost of, you know, having a pretty insane amount of latency. You need the amount of latency that retune and pitch shift, etc., kind of introduce. So that's just one of the limitations with real-time filtering, is that those lower frequencies, they will ring out longer. And it's really hard to kind of mitigate that. So now, what else can we do? Let's add a pitch shifted signal. It's not correlated. How about any? So I'll just have Prism for now. So you can see how freeing it is, how much you can kind of do with it. So one more thing I wanted to talk about is I've gone over the pitch, the isolate, and the range. One thing, or two things I haven't mentioned yet, is obviously the mix, which is pretty self-explanatory. But one more thing is I've got skins for Prism, and it remembers the skin that you select. So, for example, if I select this skin right here, and I were to open up another version, it would then remember that skin, and it would continue using that. I can switch it to this one as well, and then this one, and I've kind of designed them for different types of flavors because Prism isn't just for sort of harmonically pleasing. Well, obviously, it will still be harmonically pleasing, but you can do any scale. So, for example, the Transient dominant one in here. That one sounds a bit darker and a bit more mysterious. So you can see, you can kind of get it up to your liking as well if you want. You can also just free draw on this and completely mess up the scale if you want. You can hold one note if you wanted to. You can reverse it. Just super strange. You can draw maybe a... when do you want to use, like say just one note? Well, if you, for example, have the range at a specific place, you can tell it essentially to only play those specific notes. Which I think is pretty cool. Like, you can do some pretty fun stuff that way. So the last thing I wanted to mention is the main mix amount. So what does this do? Because we have a mix dial up here, right? So why do we have this other dial right here? Well, what this does is I'm leveraging the filter bank to also do transient splitting. I think as an example, I can pull up, I will pull up a thing. 1 second. I'll do my gravity thing. I'll do the other thing because I think that'll sound pretty interesting. Where is it? Somewhere on my desktop. Where are you? Trying to work. It's gravity. Oh no, I think it's a regular video, right? Yeah. Let me see if I can find it. I think it had face plant in it. Find it. I think I actually rendered it out too. Let me check. This thing? No, that's not it. Where is it? Not it. I could also just load up the project, but that would have an inherent amount of latency that I don't want to deal with right now. So I'm trying to find the video. I think it's just some recorded video. I don't know which one it is anymore. This thing? No, that's not it. That's the other thing. It might be this, actually. One of these last ones, I think. Oh, it might be this one? Yeah. Yeah. It's this. Okay, let me drag this into Ableton. So this will be pretty cool. Close this guy. Go back to stream. Close you. So I made this this project the other day. Okay, I can't currently. Go. Don't even need you. Disable this. Disable this. I'm waiting for this. Shit is straight mental. Got tricks up my sleeve like. So this actually has Prism in it, and as you can hear, a lot of the notes and all are kind of really hitting the Phrygian dominant scale. So if I load up Prism here, and I go with Phrygian dominant, shit is straight mental. Here, you can really hear how like all the notes in the original actually like got tricks up my sleeve like really hitting those notes, and I can change this whole thing to minor, right? So I could go to minor. And the problem is, though, that not only obviously are we getting quite a bit of resonance, but right now this is at 100%. So everything in the mid-frequency section, it's considering as something to be processed. So what's happening with this mix knob is if I turn it down and I slowly start bringing it up, you can hear how the drums are still pretty clean now. If I have it 100%, the drums are getting dispersed quite a bit. If I pull it back, it's trying not to touch all of the transients and all in the mix. So in this case, because it's quite a busy mix, once again, you're getting quite a bit of noise floor because the vocoders aren't a high slope. If they were, you would get a lot more dispersion. So what you can do to mitigate that is to turn up the isolate quite a bit. I'm waiting for this. And now you're getting it really good. Shit is straight mental. Got tricks up my sleeve like. And you can see the isolate only works on the retunes. So it's trying to just, keep all the transients intact and not processed, while it's processing primarily the sustains.
Tricks up my sleeve like
So for example, if you have a transient heavy like this one, it'll try to not process the beginning transient, but only the end of it. So that's what the main one does. If you're just working primarily with a tonal signal, I just recommend having this at 100% so you don't get any weird gargling stuff. So that's what Prism does. Now, what I wanted to do is show you some of the incredible things you can do with Prism and just regular synthesis, right? So one of the interesting things I've been playing around with is partials in Faceplant and Serum and whatever you use. So if we load up Prism in here, the way you have to think about the matrix is similar to a MIDI scale. So if we load up a scale, right here you have the same correlation. So this is your C note, and you can remap that C note to any other note in the regular 12-octave scale, at 12 semitone octave. And the same goes for Prism. So if you have a frequency coming in that is a C, you can remap that to any of the other up to B. So that's how you can create scales, and that's how it does its thing. So I'm just going to go with D minor because I really like that scale. It's super easy to work with, and I can go from there. So with Serum, we can draw partials. So I'm going to do that. I'm just have a clean line. And in this case, I actually prefer using Faceplant for this because Serum does normalization, and Faceplant does not do that when drawing in partials. So if I go ahead and add our base partial in here, so drag this out, and I just draw in the first, so not the DC one, just the first one. Let's draw a few more. Get a bit of a saw wave sound. And I start adding random harmonics. Getting quite a pleasing sound. If I take out Prism, we're getting, sort of the regular that has nothing to do with, scales or chords or anything. Bringing back Prism. You can do really, really cool stuff. Is it a plugin or is it a Plugdata? Yeah, it's a Plugdata patch. That's what it is. Yeah. So where can we take this? Well, first of all, that's one of the things that you can do. Then you can start looking at things that, like, sample, load up the default wavetable again. We could draw in a few harmonics. And then we can maybe start, let's do a random LFO, but start randomly pitching this up and down, right? And just see what happens, right? Because what's happening when we pitch them up and down is we're changing the pitch of all of the partials. But because it goes through Prism, everything stays in key. You can kind of see that down there. Doesn't matter, right? So it's up on my Patreon. So the Plugdata patch you can download as a zip file because it's a folder containing a bunch of other things as well, like the pictures and all. And then you can just subscribe to the elite tier, which is like $60, and it also has all of my other effects in there. You can just grab it, download it, and then it'll work forever, essentially. But if you stay subscribed, you also get, you know, updates and all. But you can also just wait a few months until you resubscribe and then grab all the newest updates and patches and all that. Well, the partial and the harmonic are basically the same thing. You can refer to a partial essentially as a sine wave, right? Look how nice that sounds. Just me adding. Now let's start experimenting with FM, right? So I'm going to add a sine wave, and then I'm going to start adding FM. Start pitching up. Start changing. So now we're having some inharmonic frequencies in the lower region. So you can see if I move this around. Maybe we can adjust some of the modulation just a little bit. Let's disable the retrigger. In this case, actually, I don't want to modulate that. I want to just modulate the volume of this FM. That is a really tough signal to work with. That would be incredibly inharmonic. Now I want to also introduce some filter table. So I'm going to go ahead and use some of the comps, and I'm going to morph through the filter table and see what we can get. Let's add some delay to this so we can get a little bit of a soundscape going. Mix this in so we can actually get the sub out of there. I'm gonna go ahead and actually I'm gonna keep it like this. I'm just gonna create a analog with a low pass. Two. Thank God we have that limiter on the master. So this all sounds lovely, right? But did you know that Faceplant can actually do some granular synthesis? I mean, not granular, obviously it can do that, but additive synthesis. So if you load up a sine wave and you turn on the global unison and set this to be a pitch or frequency stacking, let's do frequency stacking in this case, turn on the detune, we can then add more voices and change the range of them. And we can use pitch stacking in this case to have a bit of a bigger range. And what's really fun about this is we can use the random LFO in the independent voice mode. Let's not have a retrigger. Let's turn up the smoothing, and then we can apply this to any of the parameters on the oscillator, and this will be per sine wave. So you can see how it's now changing the volumes of the partials independently. You can also see that there are some more sine waves down here. This is because of Prism. So if I turn this off, what's happening here is a pretty interesting thing, where it's there's leaking from the bandpass filters, right? So for example, if I go ahead and load up a vocoder and do modulator with itself, and let's go ahead 40 bands, and we isolate just one of them, like that one. You can see that depending on what band we isolate, we still have a little bit of leakage to the left and right of that bandpass filter. You can usually mitigate that using a higher slope. So for example, if I add it here, let's make this back to there, like bandpass, turn up the Q, you can see that we are still getting some bleeding from the other harmonics. This would, technically speaking, kind of be somewhat solved with higher slopes. And I think Prism uses 24 dB slopes. But if you increase this amount and you have a ton of them, like a filter bank, you get a lot of dispersion, and it sounds all kind of just messy, right? It's like if you had the vocoder and just duplicate it over and over and over again, you will notice it sounds pretty bad. So the best thing to do is either to use a 12 decibel slope or 24 decibel slope. So what that does then is you're getting some leakage, right? And the problem there is that usually if you were to have that leakage, it's not really a big problem, but because we are driving sine waves with it, what that means is that the leakage will also be driving certain sine waves. The great part though is that if you're using a scale, this doesn't really matter. So that noise floor that we see here, or the bleeding, if we had it in chromatic, you would see we would have a visual representation of the bleeding of the filter bank as a bunch of sine waves next to the main ones. And this sounds pretty bad. This is just a limitation of the real-time filters, but this actually is a non-issue as soon as you actually start using the plugin with any of the scales, because then everything is harmonically intact. And this noise floor you can actually kind of mitigate with the isolate. So you can turn up the isolate, and then you can basically remove all of the excess frequencies or the bleeding. The problem there obviously lies in that now you are causing, some isolation. So if we added some noise, for example, here, it would also kind of start to isolate that noise. So give and takes, right? There's always a bit of a balance with these things. But yeah, so let's turn this back on. Turn on the isolate. So that's just the volume, the amplitude. What we can do as well is also, for example, change the pitch of all of the individual partials. We take a look at the spectrum here. It's now pitch shifting all of the sine waves, but they all stay in key. And change the range. And if you wanted the main sine wave to stay the same, you can just instead modulate the range of the global unison. And then the main sine wave stays at its same position. So now what we can do is also add distortion and do this in poly. If we turn on poly, we're just adding distortion to each of the sine waves. Yeah, just a little bit of it. We can also maybe drive the distortion here. And as well, we don't even have to use an analog wavetable. We could use a regular wavetable and try and see if maybe we can find some cool, maybe sine. I had like maybe the tension sine could sound really interesting. But let's go ahead and warp through the wavetable. Bend the partials a little bit. Maybe let's add some try the sync window. Now we're slowly getting some interesting things. We can also try maybe adding a bandpass filter to all of the individual sine waves. So they get random bandpass filters. Once again, whatever we do, it's all still intact, right? It's all still harmonically relevant. So we can even add some heavy distortion and just completely distort the crap out of it with, say, shape a table. Let's also add a single sine wave to go into lane 2. Maybe have some OTT after, just to kind of keep things So you can't really go wrong with whatever you do. You don't have to necessarily automate the range. You can also automate, we can turn this up. And then maybe let's try and automate the semi-sense here. So if we turn off Prism, it sounds like this. A bit like a cat, actually. Actually sounds a bit like a cat. That's funny. So that's sort of just on the additive side of things. Another fun thing that I've recently discovered is with granular synthesis, you can build some incredible soundscapes by using phase plant's delay. So the delay in phase plant is really interesting because you can turn the feedback up to 100% and then it becomes a sort of like a buffer. So if you turn up the delay, say, let's keep it at 200, and I just load up a random additive, just load up a random granular sample to modular one here. Let's do this one. Turn off the mix here. Hear it. Right, and then we turn up the feedback to 100%. It keeps that sort of in a buffer and just repeats it. So if we play just a little bit, you get that, and then we can play from a different position and start playing something into it. Maybe change the pitch, play something else. We can let it fade out, or we can add some filtering to it and then reset it, and then it keeps it like that. It's really interesting. Then you can still add stuff to it. Fade it out again a little bit, let something new in. Hello, Predator. And then we can, for example, also add in maybe a note from a low saw wave. What we can do now is we can start adding Prism to this, and we're going to get a bunch of actually usable results. So you can see now we're adding sort of to the whole chord. Add a different note to this. Do a Now what we can try and do is just change the sample to something else. See if we can get something interesting. Want to filter it a little bit, and then reset it. Slowly let it fade out. Both sides, and let's add a unison mode to the saw. Around. Try this one. You're seeing how we're like we're really building a soundscape here over time. Any changelog for Prism? Changelog, it has not been updated yet, but it's coming. You can make crazy breakcore with this. Yes, I agree. Thanks for sharing your explorations. No problem. You can see my tone here is set to -3.5, and so slowly over time it fades out, which is pretty interesting. And what I really like about this technique is that it's not like a regular pad where you just throw a bunch of samples into a big convolution reverb or like a Valhalla room or long reverb. Instead, you're really looping it. This is a loop, right? An 800 millisecond loop. It sounds like a pad. Unless you start moving it around and then it sounds all kind of garbled and stuff. So it's quite a different note. Oh, that's awesome. Look at that. That's instant inspiration, right? That sounds like a sampled piece of music. Let's try phrases, acoustic, piano chaos. Let's try adding some random pan to the granular here. Oh, that one's somewhat difficult. Bring in the... Whoa! We're getting a little bit of a... vocals, good idea. Want to grab a sampler. Its own group, please. Jesus Christ. Well, I don't think they have any good vocals in here, at least. I don't think. We could try, though. We could try with... So I could try having the delay outside. For example, we could try with delay right here. And then what we could do is we could have faceplant and current. Because I know current has a bunch of really cool vocals. So if we go to current, granular, enable that. Go to tonal. We have vocal. Vocal. I guess we go to all and then we scroll down to V. I guess we go to stream, sounds, samples, and then we go to vocal. No search results? Oh, not download it. Loud. There we go. Let's go back to faceplant real quick and just start adding. Yeah, we have to go into the delay. I'm not logged in. Turn up the feedback. So delay is active. Enable this. Current again. I'm logged in, so I'm not sure why the cloud is not working. And it may have just crashed my Ableton actually. Oh, okay. Even local is somewhat slow. Alright, that works. I guess I can play the preview. What we could also do is we can go ahead and bypass this. Why does the cloud not work? Oh, no, it works. Right. All I had to do is undox myself, I guess. Vocal. Here we go. So now I can just play these, and then they will be fed into the delay line, which is the colorless delay. So I play this. Oscillator here. Listen to that later phone. That's a loop. That's 200. So what if we set this to... What if we set this to a whole, like, second, right? That should give us plenty of time to fill the buffer. Disable this and just let that play. So now we have our breeze base to start with. And now we can start adding stuff to our delay line. So I'm going to start adding some of the pianos here. Then let's start adding maybe some of the vocals. So this into the grains. So that's with a second, right? That gives you plenty of time to kind of loop something and get something interesting. But you can also go with just completely like chaos. So you can start with a really, really short, like that. And just keep morphing it. Then you get some really interesting things. Yes, we can lower it a little bit. Once again, that's without Prism, right? So what makes this really possible is because of these chromatic resynthesizers or rescalers, right? It means I can use any material at any pitch with any effect, and it still runs through and creates a harmonically intact signal. And I think that's really what makes Prism so special is N-Prysm so special is that the ability to do anything without really having to worry about staying in key. That would be out of the D minor scale, right? Even if I moved it up and down, we would lose the scale awareness, right? And then with Prism, we keep it. And that's all just with kilohertz delay, which is free. And then obviously Faceplane is paid, but you can probably find some cool things in other sims or things like that. You can probably even like just browse some of the leads and then maybe just load one up. This doesn't just work for minor scales. We can go a little bit of a different direction and actually pick the Phrygian dominant scale. Now what we want to do here is we want to make sure, because I don't know what the nodes are to press on the on the typing keyboard, but I can go over to the MIDI effects and select the Phrygian dominant scale, hover apply in D before any of the other effects. And now, whatever notes I press, we'll get a way different vibe. And yes, that was the one that I showed on Twitter. Go back to our Granular and the unison, spread, low pass. Slow down. Yes, N-Prysm is available for Mac and Windows because it's essentially just a patch for Plugdata, which is free and open source, and that is available for both Windows and Mac. Ooh, that sounded really cool. Try something. Right chord. Once again, that would be completely off, right, without Prism. It's just... even know. So yeah, as you can tell, Prism is very much capable of doing dark and mysterious processing as well. And we could, you know, change the root node on the fly as well up here. So if we wanted some G, do that. It's really fun. It's just a lot, like very freeing, especially because it doesn't really use a lot of latency, right? It's only 6 milliseconds. And I've done a lot of work in terms of optimizing this plugin using some smart downsampling techniques for the filters. Yeah, I was able to like only use 0.25x of the CPU usage that it should be using, which is really cool. How much is the Prism? Well, Prism is part of my Patreon Elite tier, which is $60. 16. And that's a subscription, so you can subscribe for a month, for example, then unsubscribe or cancel the subscription. And then you can essentially grab that and all my other patches for $16. But yeah, this is just one other way you can do some really interesting things. One fun thing as well that might interest you is to just run your favorite wavetables through Prism and see what happens. It's really interesting. So if I go ahead and just open up, I'm going to open this up in Serum, for example, or people like Serum. If I go ahead and go to my wavetables, for example, the melody ones is actually really interesting because these were meant to be used for the filter table by kilohertz, but we can use this in Serum with Prism, and this is in Thrigi dominant once again. So if I move this through, open up the U8 here so you can see what's happening. You can imagine that with a bit of reverb. So maybe we move through the thing. So one thing I recommend if you want to get some interesting random LFOs and Serum. Just use the chaos modulators. They're very useful for this kind of stuff. Then make sure this is slowed down. I'm going to use the second one on the pitch. So chaos 2 goes to the pitch. So now it's running through the wavetable. It's also pitch shifting the wavetable. It's so fun. Take a bit. I do have a landing page. All the Patreon patches have essentially a manual on the patch or on the page that, one second, that you want to check it out on. I don't think you will be able to see the entire post. So for example, here I have the Plugdata bundle, which just has all of them in there. So it's just one zip file that you download and then kind of tells you what the individual things do. Then you can open up, for example, the actual post that explains everything and has a manual in it, essentially. So you can know what it actually does. But I'm not sure if you can see the entire post if you're not subscribed. Not entirely sure about that. I may have to take a look at if I can enable that, though. But yeah, what we're getting here is essentially just random melodies, right? Because we have a wavetable that has just a bunch of sine waves in it. They're getting pitched up and down. We can probably make this even more extreme. That's the melody ones. If I go ahead and just pick up, you know, some of my like more dubstep style wavetables, they sound like this. Turn off the reverb here. Let's run that through Prism. And this is a point where I would recommend using the transient splitter. Figure out a good position, and then maybe use some of the isolate on this. Becomes a lot cleaner. If you use the noise oscillator, is it possible to make it tonal with Prism? Yes, of course. Use the noise oscillator and use anything. You can have some one-shots in here, of course. All of it runs through Prism because Prism is just an effect, right? Pull this up a little bit. This down. Even throw on some compression. Sorry, I'm getting carried away. Sorry. Then we can try, you know, some FM, for example. We can still do that. We want to clean up some of the... Put it to trigger and dot. Let's try the typical bandpass. Try adding some comp filtering to this. This is usually where I would like use spec comp, which is another one. Of course, another one of my Plugdata patches. So I would use spec comp on this instead. Spec comp light to be specific, and just use that preset. I think we're getting limited by the limiter here, so I'll have to lower this a little bit. Then maybe we'll just add a saturator to this over here. What's really fun is we can now use, the frequency shifter here, and it'll be sort of tonal. Now let's try my trusty ring mod technique using just a sine wave. Then we bring up the volume. Oh, actually we do it on here, right? Ring mod from A. Then maybe we'll use another LFO here on dotted mode. And then we'll apply that to the pitch. The problem here is because we have a sine wave and we're using a comp filter. It is filtering out the sine wave. Also distorting it. So let's move this over to this one probably. Let's note track this. And probably disable the multi-pass here so we can get some. And what's really fun is with this sine wave, we can also start adding unison, turning down the width here, and then we can turn up the range all the way. And if we turn up the detune, what happens is that we're essentially creating multiple notes with this. So if I mute this, getting some artifacting from, I think, the volume automation. So now if I start turning up the detune, and these all still stay in key. Then maybe we can, squarify this just from the wavetable itself. add the compressor. Go back to spec comp. So you can see just how much freedom this gives you. Even your classical yoi sound, or we could even make a pretty cool one here. If we do, I think it was just 2 unison, then remove the coarse pitch. The coarse pitch. Put it back to 0. We can set these back to the original. Now what you can do is you can use the detune. You can automate that detune. To create some pretty cool So I don't even think we need to have the level of this up. At least a little bit. So yeah, there's a lot of fun you can have. Is it basically the same as Ableton's Resonator or Chroma plugin? It was very different. It's think of it like a vocoder, but instead of vocoding, like instead of having a filter bank that modulates another filter bank, you have a filter bank that modulates an actual like oscillator bank. So it's almost like an additive synthesizer that resynthesizes the signal with perfectly in tune notes. And then obviously that would be 3 dominant, so you could use it to create some pretty gnarly, sort of mysterious bass sounds. But then you can go to minor again and have it be sort of, be more in line of something harmonious. Even though that still sounds pretty dark. Let's add a delay in here and then just have that be ping pong. What's really fun is you can get sort of a color yaw by just having these two sine waves move around. Something is moving around. All right, these are moving around. Right. Trigger. With some stereo. And you get super clean. And then with a click of a button, you can just switch it to a different scale. Which is super fun. Yeah, it's just really freeing, you know? It's just like this kind of effect allows you to work in so many different ways. Make it like a 4. Well, that's actually kind of sick. Wait. What if I make this using, I want to use the spec gates. Where are you? Oh, this wants to be after spec. try different. We can also instead just have it be 1. And then you can do some wacky stuff like putting this on a stepped mode and then just applying that to the coarse bit. Now you're hearing a melody in there. Dun, 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 dun. And I have one particular wavetable that goes from a sine wave to a distorted sine wave. I think it's this one. So this is without Prism. And then with it. The raw serum. Yeah, Prism makes it colored. Make the stereo maybe? It's possible. This is 1/8. But yeah, I think that was enough exploring for today. That was quite a fun stream. I hope anyone watching this maybe after the stream as well will understand how powerful Prism is. And we'll make great use of it, because I feel like these kinds of effects, I still wish I was able to do real-time linear phase filters that would perfectly, capture the plus minus 50 cents region of every node and then do it that way. But it's just not possible. And I think Prism, though, gets like 95% there, while being only at 6 milliseconds of latency. And yeah, it's been an incredible tool for myself and hopefully for you as well, if you ever get it. I am potentially looking into, maybe collaborating again with Synth Audio on this, because I feel like if it was a proper VST, it would be a little bit more easy to access, and they've already done an amazing job with Chroma, and maybe at some point we'll look into realizing this into like a real sort of plugin. But it's fully functional in Plugdata. It's well optimized, and it gets the point across. And honestly, if there won't be a call-up on Prism for with Synth Audio, this will still be 100% fine to use. But yeah. Anyways, that was a fun stream. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And next stream that I will do is probably going to be a production stream again. So I'm just going to be producing. I do have some I want to work on. Potentially even, I was thinking of doing a remix for one of VR's tunes. This Could Be Us. Because I know there was some stems for it 1 or 2 years ago for a remix competition. I'm trying to get the stems just because I want to do a remix for fun. Same kind of similar story with the Marauder remix that I did. Just for fun, right? Just to get back into it. And I think maybe we could actually start that one on stream. I don't know. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this explorative live stream on Prism. And I wish you, anyone who's subscribed, a lot of fun with it. I was thinking of at some point maybe doing a free version of this, but to be honest, this is already very extensive, and I put like 2 to 3 months into this patch, and a lot of trial and error, just countless days, researching and trying to figure out how to make it run as good as it can. So hopefully, maybe at some point I'll be able to find a way to streamline it even further and make it available as sort of a mini plugin. I was thinking of it like something similar to Retune's simplified mode, and here sort of like a simple version like this, where you just select the scales and you have an amount and that's it, without the matrix and all, just to simplify it and make it a free version. Maybe I'll see. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream, and I'll see you around hopefully soon. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Bye-bye.